What famous place is not worth visiting? Atlantic City. Monopoly got me good. Plymouth Rock, Massachusetts. Despite all the rage, it's still just a rock in a cage. According to this thread, never go to Egypt, Hollywood, and Dubai. Noted. Llanfair Polgwynjal Gogerich Werndrobol Lantysilio Gogogok in Wales. Nothing there except an Edinburgh Wallen Mill shop. Which is just silly, as Edinburgh is nearly 300 miles away. Hollywood, it's seedy and disappointing. It's full of entire industries, Scientology that take advantage of starry-eyed twits. Plymouth Rock. I don't know how famous it really is outside of New England, but it's a rock that marks where the Pilgrims supposedly first landed in Massachusetts. It is quite literally just a medium-sized rock with 1,620 carved in it, but every elementary school teacher around Massachusetts at least hypes it up for the class field trip to see a literal rock that is not big, impressive, or really historically relevant. Driving an hour on a bus to see this was the most anticlimactic thing, and I would not particularly recommend. Land's End, UK. Heralded as the fourth most disappointing attraction in the UK. It's not even disappointing enough to win an award. Edit. I mean the landmark in Cornwall, not a clothing store. Dearie me. Plymouth Rock in Plymouth, Ma. It's literally just a small rock. Hollywood Walk of Fame. It's a sidewalk, and outside of maybe big events where they may clean the ones around where photos may be taken, it otherwise is just covered in dirt from people's shoes, and some are barely legible because they haven't been cleaned in ages. In 3rd grade, a meteor crashed in the backyard of a kid's house in my neighborhood. He talked about it every day at school and said people weren't allowed to see because NASA was collecting samples. A few days later he said we could go see, but everyone had to pay $5. Me and a few friends paid him and went over his house later that day. When we got to the backyard, we saw a 3-foot deep hole that was clearly dug by a shovel. We called him out on it and he said something like, "That's where it landed, but the scientists dug around it with shovels to take samples." Worst $5 I've ever spent. I have no idea where you are nowadays, but fuck you, Benji. Me, an Egyptian, ah shit, here we go again. Times Square on New Year's Eve. Just forget it. It has never been worth it. Egypt. It's like if phone scams were a materialized location. You get there and right away the airport is going to start scamming you, take your electronics away and tell you that you need permits for them, which they will gladly sell you, and then tell you that it's the wrong one and have you buy another one. The hotel you stay at will check your bags again like the airport did, and again tell you that you need permits or whatever random thing they decide they can get away telling you needs one. The police will extort money from you if they think they can. Fake police will come up to you and fine you or tell you to follow them to different sites where they will charge you. Children will run up to you and ask if you want to ride their camel very aggressively. They will cut you off with their camel and not let you move forward, tell you it's free, and then try to charge you insane amounts of money and call their camel pimp over to deal with you if you don't pay. If you don't get on the camel, they will often even get the camel to attack you. It's all pretty wild, it's not worth it. Platform 9 in King's Cross Station, London. Stupid metal statue on a straight wall, a horrible queue to taking a photo with you on it, and another 100-meter-long queue to the small and very expensive Harry Potter shop. I was there middle of the day in off-season, don't want to even think about it on high season. I work close to Times Square in Manhattan. If you have an ad blocker on your computer, you will hate Times Square. Serious, what would you do if your so asked you to have an open relationship? I was asked. I said no. Things carried on as normal for a few months. Then I found out that the reason she asked was because she was cheating on me. Bye bitch. She asked. I said no. She did it anyway. I'm in the process of moving out. Edit. Thanks, everyone. Too much to respond to, but it'll be fine. I know who I am and what I'm worth. I have plenty of opportunities, but I'm taking it easy on myself for a bit. I would not want to take an established monogamous relationship and turn it into an open one. I'd say I'm not interested, and I would ask them if that was a deal breaker for them. Open relationships tend to work out better when they start that way and have clear expectations. I actually said yes, and it killed the relationship very quickly. It was not that much of a stretch for us. We would participate in group scenes, but we always came as a pair. There were never any issues, and it even brought us closer together. We were able to flirt as a team and explore our sexualities. There was never any jealousy. But when she requested we open it up, she also started ignoring our explicit, agreed upon terms. More than any physical act, that felt like cheating. And when I spoke up about it, I got dumped. I would ask them why they suddenly want an open relationship after dating me for so long, and be honest with them. I would tell them that open relationships aren't something I'm comfortable with because I like monogamy. If they can't be happy with me in a monogamous relationship, then it would be over. I'd say no, but I would want to sit and have several conversations about why they wanted that and how we can retool our relationship if that's what's needed. It could ultimately lead to an ending, but he's my person, I'm not throwing that away when it could be salvaged. 1. I would say no because I am not interested in sleeping with other people and I know having my partner sleep with others would not maintain our emotional bond. 2. I would consider leaving because while open relationships work for a lot of people, my partner asking me to open would show a great misunderstanding of who I am and what I've been through. A big enough misunderstanding of who I am at my core that we should not be together. Let's get the divorce papers and open it all the way up. Don't do it. My best friend and his wife are in an open relationship right now and it's going badly. It was fine at first, but now their marriage is in shambles because she caught feelings for one of the guys she has been having sex with and now that guy is threatening to put my friend in the hospital if he doesn't leave. He has spent the last 2 weekends with me in my apartment because the guy has been spending time at his house, with his wife. He is so fucking sad. I can see the pain in his eyes while he tells me about it. Edit, a little more information. The interloper is an alcoholic, narcissistic, 2 times in prison for drugs and violence, extremely controlling piece of shit. My friend is just trying to fix his marriage. He thinks things will blow over eventually, but I'm not convinced. The threatening usually only happens when the interloper is drinking and he has been staying with me Thursday through Saturday just to keep the peace if the interloper goes to their house. Edit 2, I'm having trouble replying to comments. There are just so many. Don't feel like I'm ignoring you if I don't reply. Break up. He can have an open relationship without me in it. If I wanted an open relationship then I would just remain single. Well, I agreed, but only out of fear of losing her. It broke me. And I lost her anyway to a guy she met in a swinger club and who basically could be her father. Never again. Also, everyone I know who did it learned the hard way shit like this doesn't work out in like 99% of cases. I'm a stark monogamist. I'd probably leave the relationship. If it's a marriage, well, that's trickier. Therapists that have cried in a session, why? I was working with a deeply depressed client who had a lot of negative self-talk about how she was always a failure. We were exploring the origins of this and how young she was the first time she felt self-blame. She told me her earliest story of when she was in 2nd grade. Afterwards, as we were processing it, I expressed that it wasn't your fault about the story. She just broke down sobbing and said nobody has ever said that to me before in between sobs. It hit me and I cried a little. My therapist cried while mediating a discussion between my mom and I. I have a neurodegenerative disease and she is my full-time caregiver. Because of my severe disability, she also has legal guardianship of me, even though I am in my 20s, this is all fine with me, I need the help, and I agreed in court to all of it. This was the first true disagreement that we ever had. I am ready to die. I am in pain, unable to do anything for myself, and it's only getting worse. I asked my mom to sign a DNR, because I have been resuscitated before, it was a mess, and I don't want it to happen again. She refused. She doesn't want to lose her child and wanted to do everything medically possible to keep me alive. The session was essentially me begging her to let me go, while she sobbed and said she could never sign a paper that would lead to my death. It was a terrible situation. No one was the bad guy, no one was trying to hurt the other. It was someone wanting their suffering to end, versus a mother not wanting to lose her child. My therapist agreed that I should be allowed to make this choice, but certainly didn't think my mom was manipulative or evil, just already grieving and trying to hold on to me as long as possible. I saw her wipe her eyes several times, and they were red by the time we were done. She actually hugged us both at the end. The situation wasn't resolved during the session, but my mom came around shortly after. She wouldn't sign the DNR, but gave me legal permission to do so, in her mind, it wasn't her making the final decision. BTW, my mom and I have a great relationship. This was just one issue that we couldn't come to an agreement on ourselves. But it worked out, and I'm now in palliative care and have a great team looking after me, including my mom. I cried after I worked with a kid who described an emotionally difficult situation with a sibling. The kid's experience aligned very similarly to something I went through with my own sibling when I was the kid's age, and I hadn't realized how much hurt I was carrying from the experience. Being a therapist sometimes means being confronted with things you didn't realize had such a strong impact on you. Luckily, I have a stellar therapist of my own that I can work through these moments with. Deleted. I was doing a cognitive assessment for a girl. We were doing tests, and at one point she started crying. She was unable to tell me why. She was fine just one moment before. I let her collect her thoughts, then she said softly, "I don't want to be more stupid than my friends." She wasn't actually, she was very bright, but she didn't know that she has dyslexia, dysorthography, and dyscalculia. I realized that she went through 13 years of school without help. Her parents didn't want to do an assessment as they thought she was just lazy. I told her that she was very brave to decide to get help and things would get better after our assessment, and I felt tears in my eyes. Edit. First of all, I have great empathy for parents, for most of all is just a matter of ignorance, fear, and parenting is hard. If you are a parent and you see your kid struggling, please listen to professionists. We are here to help, not judge, and we will find ways to help you and your kid. Disorders don't go away, don't underestimate it. The sooner you get help, the better the outcome can be. It's okay to be scared, but we're here for you and we understand you. Second, I'm really sorry to read so many heartbreaking stories about people that weren't believed and struggled being undiagnosed. I wish you all the best. I hope you are in a better situation and you got or you'll get all the help you deserve, because you do deserve it. Third, if you think something's wrong with me, get help if you are in a position to do so. Worst case, you understand yourself better and have a chance to make peace with parts of yourself. I cried in a substance treatment group. A client's mom had reached out via email to me to say that her daughter died from an OD. She called during my group, so I chose to take the call and spoke with her briefly. I thought I could continue with the group. Ended up in tears instead. I was a high school teacher and was called to counsel so many times. One time one of my students, 13F, was sexually assaulted by an adult male the night before, and her friend told me. I had to call the police, mandated reporter, and the school called mom. Mom showed up and basically told her daughter she was a slut, this was her very first sexual experience, and abandoned her. I went with her to the police station to file the report, and was in the room for the physical exam. They don't teach you these things in teacher school. My heart broke for her and I was a mess that night and day after. How could a parent do that to a child? Had a sweet little boy tell me about the death of his dad, who was his little league coach, tragically died the week of the big championship game. He went ahead and played the game the day before the funeral. He hit a home run and shared tearfully how the next day, he put the baseball in his dad's coffin at the funeral with his team all standing around him in support. Hell, now I'm crying again. Therapist here. I've gotten misty-eyed a number of times, but only outright had tears fall once. My client was very vividly describing the week her newborn daughter spent in the NICU, ending with the day that they knew she would pass. She told me what it was like to hold her baby as she died in her arms. The feeling of grief that filled the air was just too much for me to hold in, so of course a few quiet tears rolled out of my eyes. I cried when I had to say goodbye to a client of mine who was dying in hospital. We had worked through some pretty challenging things together and he had a huge impact on me, and I felt it was important for him to see that in my tears and words as I said goodbye. I was sitting with someone struggling with alcohol, who couldn't get clean. At the same time, my very best friend in the entire world was dying because of alcohol. I couldn't get to him because it was the beginning of COVID and it was tearing me up, but I went to work anyway, which was fine except for this one person. I had to stop the session, explain a bit, and then went back to her. The grief just sort of caught me off guard. I've usually cried after sessions if a client has shared some trauma or life experiences that have set them up for a difficult life or feelings of unworthiness. In session, I have cried more when clients share big successes or are graduating from services because they've met goals and such. One example was when a client, who struggled with discussing their struggles with mental health due to peer perception at school, wrote about their pet passing away for a writing class. In the writing, they shared about how helpful their pet was in coping with their struggles and how losing them had been very difficult. They were so afraid to submit it because it would be the first time they shared about their mental health outside of a handful of people. 6 months later they were on a stage sharing about the same struggles to an auditorium filled with strangers. I cried during both moments. Not during the session, but I wanted to. I had a teenage client who asked me to listen to their life story, part of the 12-step program they were in. They didn't want me to correct the grammar, just to tell them if it made sense. It started off with the first time I did drugs. I was 9 years old when my mom and her boyfriend injected me with black tar heroin. I listened patiently, and as soon as we were finished and they left, I cried bitter tears at how cruel people can be. I heard years later that the client was doing terribly, was a prostitute, and a heavy drug user. Sometimes this field is like staring into the abyss of human suffering. As a fellow parent whose kid died, these are the only situations where I find it therapeutically beneficial to the client to 1. Disclose and 2. Cry when it feels natural.